Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Daniel McAdams, our co host. Daniel, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
Good, doing well. Well, it looks like the neocons are alive and well, and we were hoping for something better. And we had a lot of noise, a lot of promises, but my assessment tells me that the neocons are still pretty powerful and a lot of influence in our foreign policy. And right now, I have trouble keeping up. Who are we pretending and getting ready to go to war? Iran, Venezuela, who's next? We're always preparing for somebody, and that worries me. I'd like to be going in a different direction. But right now, it's back to Iran, and we've been doing that for a long time. Of course, we first really showed our muscles with Iran in 1953, and we haven't quit. But our foreign policy so often backfires on us because the neocons use power that they don't deserve and don't have, and it's all mischief, and the motivation is who knows what. It isn't the motivation to defend our Constitution and promote peace and prosperity as far as I'm concerned. So right now, this is going on with Iran, and Trump's threatening, you don't do this, but he's good at threatening. And so someday the people are going to say he threatens a lot, but he doesn't do everything he said. Let's just hope when he threatens, we'll cross our fingers and say, he's just talking. We won't do it. We don't have to respond. But the whole thing is, he does go back and forth, threaten. Sometimes he drops a lot of bombs. Sometimes he orders people to be killed, and all these things. So the neocons are ruthless, and it's a shame that they have so much clout with our administration today. Daniel?
Yes, indeed, Dr. Paul. And the reason we're talking about this today is that the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group is now in the region. It's now within striking distance of Iran. If you go to that first clip, this is from the Middle East Eye. It says U.S. weighs, quote, precision strikes on Iranian officials as military buildup surges, sources say. You go to the next one. The U.S. is weighing precision strikes on high-value Iranian officials and commanders who it deems responsible for the deaths of protesters. A Gulf official familiar with the discussions told the Middle East Eye the strikes come as early as this week, but the timeline could shift. Discussions within the administration have been described as chaotic, with a debate over what the repercussions will be in terms of Iranian retaliation. So the whole thing, Dr. Paul, is absolutely preposterous. Earlier this month, the U.S. CIA and along with the Mossad and MI6 had been inserting people, and it launched an attempted insurrection in Iran. They tried to overthrow the government. What started as peaceful protests, as often happens, turned into extremely violent protests as these paid insurgents started shooting people, and they say about 3,000 people were killed. It's preposterous that a United States, that a Trump administration that itself is shooting protesters in the streets, is about ready to launch strikes on Iran, killing the Iranian leadership for allegedly shooting protesters. I would say, Dr. Paul, it's peak hypocrisy.
They're rather bold as far as I'm concerned because they've been able to get away with doing so much damage, threats and bombs and killing, starting wars without declaration, abuse of our liberties here at home, mocking of our Constitution. And it's been going on, not in the last 10 years. It's been going on systematically for a long time. And what some people ask, well, how do they get away with it? They've gotten away with it already. It doesn't even seem like these deficits are making a difference. but I think all these problems are building up. I think after World War II, the conditions were so unique. We were very wealthy. We were spared the tragic damage done in the war, and it and then we inherited or manipulated the dollar to be the reserve currency of the world, and natural resources. All these things in place introduced the notion, and the neocon issues and philosophy grabbed hold of it. This is the time you build an empire. I mean, we are powerful. But I'll tell you what, I think this could go around. We've seen the ups and downs. We've seen them with Vietnam and Korea and all these things, and the threats and the debt. Goldwater made a political issue out of the debt, and just how long we lasted since then. And right now, though, I think it's different. Yes, today we're talking about it. People say, well, yes, and there's more and more people waking up. So I see the conditions so different. I think the dollar's under more challenge than anything since World War II. I think our foreign policy is out of control. And if you look at foreign policy of great nations and empires, that is one of the biggest issues, the monetary issue and foreign adventurism. And the one thing that starts this, where people think they can do anything and everything because they're they're special, debts don't matter. Deficit spending is okay. But Daniel, I think this one, and every day we have to read and talk about these things, and it doesn't reassure me. At least a year ago, we were hoping there would be and we were getting a different message. But I'll tell you what, I think the message is not being heard, and people now are all mixed up because they don't want to say that the message has been muddled around once again, and that the neocons have as much clout as they do. So I think that everybody, and we who are in the business of trying to warn people, have a great task before us to get the people knowledgeable about why, monetary policy, spending policy, debt, and protection of civil liberties, all these things better be addressed to, or we're going to keep going downhill.
I mean, if people would just pause and think about how preposterous this entire thing is. The President Trump is taking it upon himself to bomb another country because some people who were trying to overthrow their government were unsuccessful. Why is it our job to be the policeman of the world? Why is it our job to determine whether or not this or that country needs to be bombed for some domestic political unrest they have? It's just absolutely preposterous. And you add that to the fact that this administration lies with a straight face. They lie without even thinking about it. I mean, we saw this in the last couple of days where you had the director of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. You had the director of the FBI, Kash Patel, going in front of the camera. You had the deputy chief of staff of the White House going in front of the camera saying that this person in Minneapolis was shot because he had a gun and he was determined to kill as many police officers as possible, when everybody looking at the video could tell that there was no gun involved. He was carrying a gun, but at no point did he pull it. And they just absolutely bold-faced lie. Well, the administration is lying about its foreign policy too, Dr. Paul, because we have a president who says, I will not do regime changes. This is the end of the regime change era. And he goes and he plucks the president and first lady of Venezuela out of bed and kidnaps them. And now he's considering whether or not he's going to attack and murder the rulers of Iran because he doesn't like the fact that some people trying to overthrow the government were unsuccessful. I mean, it would be comedy, Dr. Paul, if it wasn't so tragic.
I think the big issue is sometimes we miss it, and a lot of other people miss it, is sorting out truth and sorting it out and separating it from the propaganda. And we, as a people, we get to vote for peace all the time. Almost every presidential candidate, all the way back to Wilson and Roosevelt. I'm going to keep you out of war. And they were all lies. They knew what they were doing. They were preparing for war. So it's done it. And how does it? Why don't the people wake up? Well, there's the propaganda machine. There's controls on the media, and that's been around for a good many years, decades. And the people are influenced, and they have this burning desire. Like, I want to believe it too because it sounds good. I can remember George W. Bush coming out, and he recited a foreign policy that sounded like what you just got done saying. What they're told, that we're not the policemen of the world. But that doesn't hold true. People generally are recognizing, and I think the statistics that show they don't believe the government, I think that's good. But what do they do about it? They still vote for these people and they support it. And then the people who stick to their guns because they always want these changes and become an anti-war, pro-constitutional party, they get all the hostility. And so it's a propaganda fight, propaganda war. And I guess that's been going on a long time, because I do believe you have to have the support of the people, no matter how many lies they're using to defend their position.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a little bit more from the article, Dr. Paul, from the Middle East Eye. If you go to that next clip, well, some reports frame Trump's remarks as drawing a curtain on U.S. intervention. Former U.S. officials and analysts told Middle East Eye they appeared to signal a pause. So remember, he was about to do it a couple of weeks ago, and he paused. So back to the article. Trump moved up and down the escalation ladder in a similar fashion with Venezuela before finally ordering an attack on the Latin American country that resulted in Maduro's abduction. Now, here's a little bit of a twist. If you go to the next clip, the buildup of warplanes in Jordan would give the U.S. options as, and I highlight this part, Gulf states have imposed a ban on the U.S. using their airspace for facilities to launch strikes on Iran. Current and former U.S. and Arab officials told Middle East Eye. That ban has been in place since April of 25. Reuters has cited a senior Iranian official as saying that Tehran warned that the U.S.'s Arab partners would face attack if U.S. bases in their countries were used to target Iran. Iranian commentators close to Tehran have amplified this warning in public. So our allies in the region are saying you can't use our bases because we don't want to get pummeled by Iranian rockets. We've seen, Dr. Paul, in the June after the June sneak attack by Israel on Iran, that Iran does possess hypersonic missiles that can't be stopped, and none of these countries wisely want to get involved in this. So the question is, why are we doing it? Why is President Trump doing it? Well, because Netanyahu wants him to do it, and it appears that he does whatever Netanyahu wants him to do. And I think, Dr. Paul, that Americans are frankly getting sick of this.
But, Netanyahu, it was reported, and it's hard to know exactly what they're thinking. But the report said, essentially, when they were about ready to bomb Iran, and we were prepared for it, and all of a sudden, they backed off from that. And some have claimed that it was a call from Netanyahu, who, more or less said, we might be dragged into this. It was almost like, if you go and start fighting our war, you're almost going to drag us into it. You better not do it. We better wait a minute. So if that's true, to me, I find it a bit ironic. But, the mixture is there. But they're not going to give up. Just think of what they've done in the Middle East and Gaza and all the tragedy there. And it goes on. And yet that is one area where I think it has awakened a lot of people in this country, because even some Republicans who were very, very much in Netanyahu's camp have come around to thinking, this is a little bit too much. We better back off from all this killing.
Well, one of the reasons that Netanyahu asked President Trump to not hit Iran last week was that the Abraham Lincoln wasn't in position, and they were worried, since they can't defend themselves against these missiles, they were worried that we didn't have enough resources in the area to defend Israel if the U.S. picks a fight. But here's the big thing, Dr. Paul. all of the mainstream media is trying to artificially escalate the number of dead protesters. Iran itself came out with 3,000 killed in total, and that included, I think, some 1,000 police officers and other law enforcement personnel, and a lot of innocent civilians as well. So 3,000. But what the mainstream media is printing is 30,000. Now, as we know, Time magazine has always been a house journal of the CIA. And so, of course, they're going to back whatever they're told. Go to this next clip. This is from a Substack called The Dissident. And they really broke the news on this. If we can put that, yeah, go ahead. Thank you. I'm going to skip that other one. So The Dissident came out with a piece yesterday, I think it was, meet the single shady source behind Time magazine's claim that Israel killed 30,000 protesters. Now, there's a lot in this headline, the most important being that there is a single source for this figure of 30,000 that's being bandied around. And if you go to that next clip, you can see that source there on the left. And who he's talking to, of course, is the son of the late Shah, Reza Pahlavi. And that will give you an indication. Go to that next clip. And here's what it's all about, Dr. Paul. This is a blockbuster that should really be should be reposted everywhere. A recent article in Time magazine made a huge claim that the Iranian government killed 30,000 people on January 8th and 9th alone, which the magazine claimed was supported by two senior officials in the country's Ministry of Health, which Time magazine has been unable to independently verify. Very important point, but that doesn't stop them. However, the only named source for the shocking claim is a German-Iranian eye surgeon named Amir Parasta, who claimed that the surreptitious tally of deaths recorded by hospitals stood at 30,304 as of Friday. The doctor was apparently behind the reporting published in Time magazine, and he even shared the report on Instagram, referring it to it as, quote, our report. But here's the punchline, Dr. Paul. If you go to that next clip, this is the critical part that is left out. Amir Parasta had also been cited as an authority on the death toll of Iranian protesters in other mainstream outlets, including Deutsche Welle, Times of Israel, New York Post, Haaretz, and the Times of London. So this is the one guy who's the source of all of these claims that 30,000 are killed. Now, here it is, Dr. Paul. However, a closer look into Amir Parasta shows that he is not a neutral doctor, but a lobbyist for the Israeli-backed son of the deposed Shah of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, and for the American-Israeli regime change operation in Iran. Amir Parasta serves as a, quote, subject matter advisor at NUFDI Iran, a lobbying group for the Israeli U.S.-backed puppet Reza Pahlavi and for regime change. So this guy has been able to insert this 30,000 figure worldwide, Dr. Paul, into the mainstream media, and it turns out he's actually a lobbyist for Reza Pahlavi. It's Time magazine should issue an apology, I think, for even running this.
See, this is something that, if the information gets out, it would condition more Americans to question what's going on. And there was a time we would read about good journalism and dream about the days when they wouldn't publish an article or a story unless they could verify it. I think sometimes it was at least once, but twice they would do it, and even more if they thought it was very, very important to verify it. But it's the opposite this time. So if they have something, instead of verifying it, they immediately get to work to show that it's a lie. And what do you want me to do as a journalist to cover this up? So it's absolutely opposite. Now, Daniel, and I know that what we say about those kind of journalists are very true, but we also know that there are friends out there in the journalist business, and of course they're not going to get the coverage that they deserve, but it's available there, and thank goodness that you're able to gather some of this stuff in, as well as the internet providing this. So yes, it's very, very messy, but journalism is sick. I'll tell you what, they're just another arm of the deep state, another arm of the people that are organizing and are pro-war. That is where the big problem is, and unfortunately, I don't know when that changes, because people now literally, the contest between nihilism and natural law is growing. The conflict between them, because unless you have a society separate from the government, that the majority of people know and understand what natural law is all about, there's not much left. All we do is we'll hear stories of how wars have been generated by built-in lies. And I guess in my lifetime, you could, all the way back to First and Second World War, I mentioned, that was done. What did they do in Korea? Oh, this is not a war. This is just a little old police action. So this is the kind of lies. It's just a shame that we don't have more out there arguing the case for, let's tell the truth and let the truth be known to the people. Let them make up their minds.
But, as you know, Dr. Paul, they have to manufacture consent for war. And they've been doing it all along. They've been doing it, since the beginning of time, probably. But here's an example from 1990 that people should remember, because we are repeating this exact thing. We have an interested party who's going out there giving testimony to a number of people being killed that he has every self-interest in inflating. Well, let's turn back. Let's put on that video just to remind people of what happened in 1990 in the run-up to the first Iraq War, when they also had to manufacture consent. This is testimony before the U.S. House of Representatives. It's a little longer than we usually put up, but watch it carefully.
They pulled out his fingernails and applied electric shock to sensitive private parts of his body. I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators, and left the children to die on the cold floor.
Desert Storm is launched. 135,000 Iraqis are killed. An estimated 1 million Iraqis, many of them children and old people, then die as a result of 10 years of sanctions.
Helen Knowlton selected her as a persuasive witness to this atrocity, and it was all part of a campaign to turn Saddam Hussein, at least in the public consciousness, into Adolf Hitler. And the feeling was that they couldn't sell the Gulf War without this.
Soon after we arrived in Kuwait, 2 weeks after the liberation, it became apparent that the story was a complete hoax. We were able to go round the hospitals to count the incubators and find that, possibly with one or two that had been misplaced, that none were missing.
War very much had to be sold to the American people in order to convince them to intervene.
That's the reminder, Dr. Paul, of what happened. It was just like now, it was a PR firm, Hill and Knowlton. They had been hired to sell the war to the American people, and that's what they did. This time we have this doctor who was hired by Reza Pahlavi to start another war, and the exact same thing is happening.
Getting the truth out is a job. Getting the truth out in time for it to really have an effect, that makes it more difficult. The lies are easily told, and if you have the propaganda machine all oiled up there, it's really hard to compete with. But I do believe that eventually they use falsifying the true facts, and they're using it to promote the wars. but they just really can't kill all of the truth. The truth does come out, eventually, but it's so late. This is the reason that I keep arguing, about it. Don't go to war now, because it's easy to start these wars. It's real hard to stop them. And then you have decades sometime to clarify the lies that they told. And it's a shame that it happens that way, but it's really tragic. But still, Daniel, we have to keep plugging along, because we do gain people who do wake up and realize that they've been delivered a bunch of lies, and it's sad that they discover it so late, after so many people have to die before the truth is finally revealed. But all I can say, Daniel, is that we have to keep plugging along to try to get the truth out to the people the best we can.
Yeah, that's all we can do, Dr. Paul. I just want to show one more thing. And our good friend Connor Boyack of the Libertas Institute out in Utah, he had a good a couple of years ago, he posted about this. Now skip that first one and go to the second one, because the first one just makes the point. Now, this girl was the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States, and she went and testified as just a Iraqi girl viewing some atrocities, but it worked. Now, Connor Boyack on this, if you put it up there, in August, it's a question: did it work? Did her testimony work? And this is how it goes, Dr. Paul. In August of 1990, 2 months prior to her testimony, only 17% of Americans said they supported U.S. involvement in the Iraq-Kuwait conflict. 2 months later, nearly half of Americans thought the U.S. needed to intervene. And even worse, in January of 91, Congress voted to send American troops to fight against Iraq. Get this, writes Connor. The Senate passed their resolution by a margin of only 5 votes. And 7 senators cited this girl's testimony as directly impacting their decision to vote in favor of going to war. That is just incredible. We'll think about it. And we're going down the same path, Dr. Paul.
That's why it is so discouraging to have had some hope a year ago, and so disappointed because the people behind the scenes, at least, get control of the strings of power. And there's various factors and why that happens. Sometimes it's just out of ignorance. Sometimes it's for political purposes. Sometimes it's for monetary reasons. And who knows what the reasons are, but it does happen. And like you said, it's probably been going on for a long, long time. But that doesn't mean that the opposition and telling the truth should not continue to go on for a long, long time until we do the best job possible to reveal the truth to the people.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to close out, Dr. Paul, and again, remind our viewers, well, thank them for viewing. Thank you all for viewing, first of all. But we are in the process of doing a minor upgrade on our studio. And I think by the beginning of next week, we'll be ready to do the big reveal of the first half of our renovations to the studio. So we appreciate you bearing with us and when it's this challenging times of trying to do this remote to each other. Over to you, Dr. Paul.
Very good. I want to thank all the viewers that have tuned in today and have been with us for a long time, because without your support and your willingness to help spread this message, it falls short. But we believe that truth can win out, but this on again, off again, and competition, and good and bad and evil, it's been known for as long as history's been known. So we've purposely made it very clear what our organization is, and we're trying to have an organization where we're dedicated to peace and prosperity, because I can't understand why we don't achieve more, because how can we not lose this intellectual fight if it is by far the best? And if you're looking for peace, which most people are, if you're looking for prosperity, most people are, that the answer to this could be found in the issue of having liberty. And our founders gave us the outline. It's a shame that we're not doing more due diligence in following that and promoting the whole philosophy of peace and prosperity. Thank you for tuning in, and please return to the Liberty Report soon.